Okay. Here's the intro. Are you ready?
Okay.
I'm telling you, man. Seth Rogen, he turns himself into a pickle. Funniest shit I ever saw. That's it. That's the joke.
That's
that
it.
meme. That
Hi,
copy
my name is
pasta about.
Adeline McMurray, and I am
I
Pickle
am-
Rick.
I'm Pickle Jackson McMurray, and I'm Pickle Seth Rogen.
Who's your pickle soda? Mine's is Seth Rogen.
How many different pickle characters are there? Okay, we'll
There's
get into this on the
Pickle
meat of the show. Hi, my name is Jackson McMurray, and this is No Nerds Allowed.
We're gonna be talking about pickles a lot today.
Okay, Pickle Rick,
Pickle
the
Rick,
American pickle.
the American pickle. Some other third thing.
Chat, pickle characters.
Oh, wait,
Is there a pickle in Food Fight, maybe?
Oh no, he's a sea cucumber. I was thinking of the guy Kevin from SpongeBob. He's a sea cucumber.
Oh,
though.
you could also say, fucking, what's the name of the cucumber on VeggieTales? Do they just
Larry?
call him Nebuchadnezzar?
Yeah. Wait, isn't Larry
Is that just
a
his
pickle?
name? No, he's a cucumber.
Oh, that's right. He can turn.
But
into,
there are
yeah,
pickles.
because he's the guy with the big eyebrows. He always plays the villain. He always plays.
Yeah, there's the warty old guy. Oh, he's Mr.
Yeah.
Nezzer. Because he
Mr.
was
Nezzer,
Nebuchadnezzar.
That's right.
But that's clever. You know what? VeggieTales, I gotta give it up for Mr.
Pretty
Nezzer.
good. It's like in DuckTales when they had Scrooge for the Christmas story, but then he just continued to be Scrooge after that still.
Yeah,
Anyway.
exactly.
Yeah.
I'm Googling pickle characters.
We'll just pretend it makes sense and move on. Where Donald Duck's uncle is just Scrooge from A Christmas Story. Cade says pickles from Magic School Bus. I have not seen a frame of Magic School Bus.
Oh, what about the wife on the Dick Van Dyke Show? Isn't her name Pickle?
Yeah, her name is Pickles. Well, her name is Fiona.
Okay, go ahead.
But she's called Pickles. I know too much about the Dick Van Dyke Show.
Between the two of us, you were able to come up with 4 pickle characters that could be your persona, and we'll put
go.
a chart on Twitter.
Mom
maybe.
says it's my turn on the pickle sona. Anyway.
So, this week on the podcast, we're covering a brand new release.
Pickle OCs. Can that be a thing?
Pickle. Do they have to be Pickle Rick, or can they just be people like the American Pickle and Seth
No,
Rogen's
they're like-
American
they're like-
Pickle?
There's like 2 different breeds, and they're warring factions,
Gotcha.
and one is the Pickle
It's like
Rick,
when you're making your
Larry the Cucumber, and then one is the people who've been picklefied, and they're it's
Right, right.
warrior cats. They're warring clans.
right. I was gonna say it's like making a pony sona, and you decide whether you're a unicorn or a
Yeah.
Pegasus or just a regular
Yeah.
pony or whatever. I don't think they say pony sona. Is there a name for it?
And I should know this because I definitely had one. What was it? I think it was just your
Hoof
pony
sona?
soda. I think that's what it was. I guess.
I don't think.
Does anyone
I
want
feel
to
like I would have
expose
heard the word
themselves in
pony
the chat
sona.
and tell us what the word is?
Something. My instinct says hoof something.
No.
Your hoof. A tron.
Soda. Your pony
anyway.
pal. Your peg pal. Like a Pegasus.
Unicorn. Probably not that. So,
Buddy. Anyway.
Unabomber. That was it.
That's what it was.
This week we
That's
are
what
talking
my,
about.
Pony OC was.
Can we? Okay, hold on. I want to share my screen and go to an online pony creator thing and see how much like the Unabomber we can make a pony look. I don't know. I think it would be funny. Anyway, this week on the podcast,
This week
we can't talk
in
about
politics.
the Unabomber. An American Pickle, an HBO original movie by Seth Rogen and what's his name who directed it.
And Seth
let me
Rogen.
bring my notes up.
Seth
'Cause
Rogen,
I
the
didn't
movie.
think
This time, there's 2 of them.
There's 2 Seth Rogens. Okay, first things first.
And they kiss.
They kiss? No, that happens
They're
in
both pickle
Alien
people,
Covenant.
but one of them's like a pickle person and one's like a pickle human, and they're like, it's like Romeo and Juliet.
Good, yes. That's my new
Yeah.
screenplay. Hold on, give me just a second.
Here we go. Write that down. TM.
Why can't I find my GD Google Docs app? There it is. This movie was a movie that was originally supposed to come out in theaters, but then, you know,
It's one of those
movies
movies
kind
that
of
I
stopped.
think... It's one of those movies that I think really benefits from the fact that it's not going to be in theaters.
Right.
Like, I feel like if I saw this movie in theaters, I'd be a little bit confused and a little bit disappointed, but because I just watched it on HBO, I'm, like, kind of into it. Like, I like this movie. But I feel like if I paid $8, I would not like this movie.
So, here's just, it's not especially relevant, but this is just a weird thing I want to talk about super quick. This movie was produced by Sony, who does... So, as far as streaming services go, Peacock is owned by... oh, wait, I have this backwards. Never mind. Anyway, Peacock is owned by Universal, and HBO is owned by Warner Brothers.
Gotcha.
And obviously Disney Plus is owned by Disney.
Yes.
But all the other streaming services are kind of unaffiliated, except that Disney has, like, majority share in Hulu. They don't, like, own it outright, but they, like, mostly own it. It's a weird thing.
Weird.
Anyway. But the thing that's interesting to me is that there has been so much of, like, Disney, their whole Disney Plus thing is like, we are locking down the streaming rights to all our shit. It's all going to be in one place forever.
Well, putting
But
it
there are
back
two
to the Disney
other-
Vault.
Right. But there are 2 other streaming services that are owned by major production companies. And it's interesting that those companies are still, like, swapping their movies around to other people. Like,
Yeah.
Harry Potter, what's fascinating to me is that Harry Potter is moving to Peacock later this month. Even though it's owned by Warner Brothers and was on the Warner Brothers streaming service, it's still in these companies' best interest to, like, pay each other for movies sometimes, you know?
Yeah.
Like, Peacock is a service that's owned by a different corporation that does have their own movies, but they're like, hey, we want Harry Potter for a while. Like, if we give you, like, 300,000... Not that much. $300 million.
If we
is
give
it
you
cool
$10
if we have
billion,
Harry Potter?
you'll give us the Harry
But, like,
Potter.
Yeah, like, is it cool if we
The
have Harry
Daniel
Potter for a
Radcliffe.
while? And they're like, you know what? Sure. Like, it's interesting that Disney is the only people that are like, locked down. We will not sell you our movies for your streaming services. They're all on here. The only revenue we're getting from these is from our own service.
Yeah, which is annoying if you don't have Disney Plus, but, like, it's nice to know that if it's on Disney Plus, it's always going to be on Disney Plus, you know?
Yeah,
Like,
exactly. That's the biggest pitch for Disney Plus, is that it's sort of its best strength and its greatest weakness. Because, like, on the one hand, like, Netflix continues to be popular because it has that rotation. And if you're like, oh, I haven't really looked around Netflix in a few weeks, just open it up, be like, see what's new, what left, what's, like,
but then
you
you're
know,
always
notice
like, man,
new
I want to
things.
watch freaking, not Scott Pilgrim, the spy funny movie that we watched on the podcast.
Oh, I don't know.
Austin Powers.
I was going to say
It's like,
Burn
I want
After
to watch
Reading.
the Austin Powers movie. It was here a week ago, and then I go on and it's not there anymore.
Right.
And I'm trying to record a podcast about it, and you know.
Right.
Now I gotta pay $4
It's like, no-
to give more money to Jeff Bezos.
Disney Plus is like, is like me going to Target like every other week and always wanting to be like,
Yeah.
oh, maybe I'll check the DVD section again. Maybe they got something new in stock. And I check back and I'm like, no, it's all the same DVDs they had last week.
No.
It's a physical store and nobody buys DVDs anymore, so they're not really rotating stock very much.
There's
it's like,
no new
you're always...
selection.
It's less fun to like just click around Disney Plus because like you know what's on there, you know? But yeah, I just think that's fascinating that like even though these companies are sort of weirdly vertically integrating themselves, they're not like walling themselves off or like making their stuff exclusive to their own thing. They're just like, yeah, you know, we've got a streaming service we're making money from, and we're also making money by selling our movies to other streaming services. And the same could be said of those other streaming services that we're competing with, you know? We're like, you know...
Like, weirdly, it feels like insider trading, almost, where it's like, we're making money off of each other, and also the regular way.
I mean,
it's weird.
It's good. That's how we stop monopolies from being a thing.
I guess that's fair.
Anyway, American Pickle is based on a short story that was written by a guy who's just like a prolific sort of humorist,
just,
you know,
writes
it's
stuff,
like,
yeah.
Yeah. It's like, what if there was a guy from the 20s and he woke up today? I think it would go a little something like this. A tippa-tappa. My name's Frank. What's his name?
Let's
go. Which my big take about this movie is that short story was written in 2013. Smack dab in the middle of the Obama administration. And this feels like a very Obama administration movie to me.
Yeah. My biggest takeaway from this movie is that whatever it's trying to say is not applicable to anything because it's about a story about a guy who was frozen from 1912 in pickle juice for 100 years. Like, it doesn't...
Right.
Whatever they're trying to say about cancel culture or whatever is not applicable because...
Well, see, that's the thing. I don't think this movie has, like, a succinct message. It's just more of, like, a loosey-goosey sort of, like, oh, you know, this kind of touches on a lot of different ideas. And it's not, like, about one thing, but it, like, speaks to a handful of different things. And, like, just let it wash over you, you know? Which I kind of like. But I feel like there's a lot in this movie that has to do with, like, social politics. And I don't think the social politics of it feel outdated, but just the way in which these ideas are presented feels like a very Obama administration approach, you know, where we're talking about, like, alt-right groups. I mean, you know, back then we didn't even have the word alt-right, like, you know, like, far-right, like, white supremacist, but not really white supremacist, like, covert white supremacist groups and, like, all that kind of thing where it's like, oh, you know, here's a thing, and it's just part of the tapestry of what America is, and we don't like it, but, like, that's just how it's always gonna be, you know? We're not, like, super... Yeah, we're not, like, super conscious of that kind of thing right at that moment, you know?
Yeah.
And it's, like, that perfect moment where it's, like, the apex of, like, the Twitter era of politics, but before it really became what we know right now, you know? Does that make sense?
Before it became, like... Back when you could say white supremacy is bad and everybody would agree with you, kind of.
No, I think it's more like people were just more willing to ignore people being like, I think a woman's place is in the home. And you'd be like, yeah, like, shut up, you know? Like, whereas now, you, like, feel like you have to stamp that down a lot more vigorously than you did in 2013, if that makes sense.
Because we've seen the effects of not doing that in 2013.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, this whole movie has a very... It touches a lot of things, and it's like, I've always had that thought, like, it would be really cool to show someone from the past, like, what life, like, is today. But whenever people have that thought, they seem to, like, separate politics from it. It's like, oh, look at a microwave, haha, isn't that funny? And then we're gonna... ignore when he says something crazy and racist, and I like how this movie kind of, kind of marries the two ideas. Maybe not perfectly, but still, like, kind of brings that, like, idea that everybody has, like, kind of into reality.
He's got multitudes, you know? It's just the reality. And, you know, it's an interesting thing because, like, part of... For people who don't know, the premise of this movie is basically that Seth Rogen in the 20s gets, like, falls into a pickle vat right as the factory is, like, being condemned or whatever, and he's preserved in the pickle juices for 100 years, and he comes back in the modern day. And then, you know, hijinks ensue.
Did you laugh while watching this movie?
Yeah, I laughed a few times. I thought it was pretty funny.
It was not... I felt like watching the trailer, it really seemed like it was going to be a comedy, and the length of the movie kind of implies that it's going to be a comedy.
Right.
And then, there were definitely some moments where I exhaled through my nose, but, like, overall, it didn't seem that comedic. Honestly, it was more, like, genuinely touching than it was comedic, you know?
I mean, look, okay. There is one joke in this movie, which is... sort of the premise is that, like, present day Seth Rogen and past Seth Rogen meet up, and they're all like, oh, hell yeah, family, this is great. But then they really quickly realize that they don't fucking get along, and they kind of fucking hate each other. But, like, old Seth Rogen starts to have success making pickles, and present day Seth Rogen is, like, kind of trying to sabotage him and, like, beat him down however he can, because he's just, like, mad at him, and they, like, have this tete-a-tete.
Yeah.
But there's this moment where old-timey Polish Seth Rogen, I guess he's not Polish. I mean, they make up a country, but I'm trying to place exactly where he's, whatever. Old-timey Seth Rogen
Jewish,
is like, he's like, oh, and you do this as badly as a Polak would do it, because Polaks are the most stupid in the world, or whatever. And then immediately, young Seth Rogen goes, you know what? How's your Twitter presence these days? And, like, immediately, like, you totally get what he's going for. Like, he's if I get this guy on Twitter, that's going to be the end for him. And, like, I laughed for, like, a solid minute at that. I thought that was was, like, the perfect delivery of that joke.
I like it. So the whole thing, there's two things I really like about this movie. It's one of those movies that could very dangerously get into the fuck millennials category, like, super easily. Right. Like, they're changed 3 things, and that's what this movie is. But they don't do that, and the way that they do that is that present-day Seth Rogen is an app developer, and they actually treat that like a real job. He's actually making a useful app. He's actually putting effort and, like, doing so. Like, they treat it like it's not a throwaway goof, like, oh, I'm an app developer, I made an app called Spoof, and you get to buy fart puddles with it, haha, and you can spoof your friends. Like, it's not that. It's like, I genuinely have an idea for an app, and I'm genuinely making it, and it genuinely takes time. This is genuinely my job, and it's like, cool. I like that.
Yeah, no, it's
but
cool.
Also,
and, like, he has, like, a really good idea for an app. I was just gonna say, he has, like, a really good idea for an app that I was like, I would get this. Is there an app like this? Like, what?
Yes,
I'd be
this
interested in that
app is
idea.
a thing, Jackson.
What is it?
It's an app that scans barcodes and tells you if the company is ethical or not. There's one that tells you the percentage of slave labor that is used. I know that much.
Well, I'm trying to ask you what it is specifically, because I want to get it.
I don't know the name. I know it exists.
Okay.
So I'm sure if you looked at it on the App Store, you would find it.
Okay.
But through the events of the plot, young Seth Rogen gets arrested, and it, like, totally ruins his app because it's all about, like, the ethics of, like, what you're purchasing, and then, like, him having a record is unethical and blah blah blah, which is really interesting. But I love it where his first idea is to just take the app and just, like, change the aesthetic, so it's like, take it from a criminal, fuck cops, here's what's ethical. It's just really funny. And he changes the thing where he goes, this kale fucks.
Yeah, that's really good. And there's that line where he's texting Yorma Taccone where he's like, new pitch, I could be the bad boy of ethics. And I think that's the funniest string of words I've ever heard. I think that's so good.
No. I really like this kale fucks. That's way funny.
this kale fucks is really good too. But yeah, okay. I think my biggest like big picture like plot beef with this movie is that I'm never sure if people at large understand that Seth Rogen is the like why everybody doesn't know Seth Rogen as the guy from 100 years ago who just came to life. Because
and
obviously that would be a huge deal. Yeah, like, obviously that would be a huge deal, but whether or not people recognize him or know anything about him seems to just depend entirely on whether or not that's helpful to the plot, you know?
Yeah, what we want to happen. When it's, like, even on, like, the Twitter joke, where it's like, if you start saying this shit on Twitter, you're gonna get canceled. But, like, if he was from 100 years ago, I feel like people would be like, alright. Like, you know, like, they wouldn't, like, stan him, but they would, like, at least have the understanding that this isn't coming from the modern perspective, you know? It's like when Grandpa says something racist, and you're like, hey, Grandpa, don't do that. It's literally what that is, but instead that's... Right. But then when they start trying to track him down to get him deported, they're like, 100-year-old blah, blah, blah gets his thing thrown away, so he has to leave now. And there's that really funny shot where they're talking about the archaic system for his, like, records. There's just this box that just says Jews on it.
Yeah, that's really funny. Really they're talking about, like, trying to, like, look up his paperwork from back in the day, and they're like, because of the old Ellis Island system, and, like, cut to some guys in a room with a big suitcase that just has the word Jews written on it, that they're, like, shuffling through and, like, shrugging their shoulders. It's pretty good. Yeah. But there's... Oh, shoot, what was the other thing I was going to say? Oh, and I think in general, the other big-time Obama administration vibe I get from this is where it's like, oh, he becomes like a weird like Republican figure, and he like says all this sexist bullshit on TV, and everyone's like, oh, this guy's bad news. He's gonna get deported for racism. And it's like, what? Like, what is that? Like, that is something that we would only accept as being a real event, like, 6 years ago, you know?
Well, he doesn't get deported for racism. He gets deported for being anti-Christian, which...
I guess.
I don't know why Seth Rogen thinks that 100% of people are Christian, because... Yeah. They're not. I mean, understood that. Because he gets up at that event and talks, and he's spewing all this sexist, like... stuff and like diagonalized backwards talk, and then like 100% of the audience is Christian and gets pissed off when he says that thing like it's the year 1950 and everyone is Christian. Like it was weird. Right. Yeah, but it's fine because it helps the plot, but it does not feel like 2020 at all. But
yeah, there's just a certain amount of naivety to be like, oh, this guy sucks, and because he sucks, there would probably be consequences, you know? It's like,
but then they even make the joke at the end where he's like, I said something terrible, so I can never be, like, a businessman, I can never be, like, famous and successful ever again. And then Seth Rogen goes, nah, dude, you're totally fine, which is a funny joke because corruption and how horrible the world is. But that one joke does not match the energy of the rest of the film. Right. So.
Yeah, totally. Sorry, one moment. Oh, I just to go through and another bit, we've gone through all the funniest bits, but the other bit that really made me laugh was the one where Seth Rogen says that thing about polio arm, and then young Seth Rogen is like, oh, you know, we cured polio, like, it's not even really a thing anymore. And old Seth Rogen is like, I knew we would. I totally got the feeling. I was like, we could cure polio. And young Seth Rogen's like, cool. Glad you knew that there was a cure for polio. No,
you're missing the best part of that joke where he goes, was he Jewish? And he goes, yeah, he was Jewish. And he goes, yes, knew it.
Yeah. And it's interesting. One of the things that I think this movie remarks on that I think is sort of not something we talk about a lot is like this sort of like we don't do like angry rivalries with other cultures in the same way that we did back in the old days, you know? Like in the olden days it would be like, oh, the Polish, fuck the Polish, we're from whatever neighboring country to Poland and they suck. Like, I don't know, I guess people always talk about, like, China and Japan like that, but it's like, it feels like that's not something we do anymore. Like, obviously we,
Yeah,
like, criticize other countries, like, political structures and, like, have adversarial relationships with them on the world stage or whatever. But it's
but
not like
it's
I
not
meet
fun anymore.
well, it's not like I meet a Russian guy and I'm like, oh, Russian guy? I don't know. Like, America and Russia don't get along. We probably should fight. You know, like, it doesn't work like that anymore, you know? That's, like, just a little
Yeah,
cultural thing that I feel like,
miss it.
I mean, I don't know. Well, I don't miss it. I'm just saying, like, it's like an interesting wrinkle that we don't, like, talk about very much. It's just
Yeah.
interesting to think about.
Well, then he's immediately like, oh, the Cossacks, and he goes and punches that guy. Is that what you're talking about?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, well, that,
Yeah.
and also, I feel like I feel like the joke where he's like, was he Jewish? Like, it's really important to him that he knew that it was a Jewish guy who cured polio, is less like a hooray for us. Like, this is my pride of being Jewish. It's more like, score one, Jews. Like, Polish, go fuck yourselves. We got this one. You know, like, it feels
Yeah.
more like an adversarial sort of attitude than like
Yeah.
a pride attitude.
Yeah, I don't know, because, like, that's, like, what the whole ass Cold War was just that. And then, I don't know. I'm glad
Not
that went
really.
away. I can't tell you why it did. I think it was kind of the internet, maybe. Like, the fact that
Yeah, I
we
mean,
all
pretty
kind of got
much.
extremely easily connected, and we're like, oh, all these things are really stupid. Why am I mad at you?
Right, yeah. Yeah, I don't know. It's just an interesting thing. I think the take of like what if a guy came back from 100 years ago and being like, he would probably become like a fucking dangerous alt-right figure, is like, yeah, you're probably right. Like, on accident.
Yeah, yeah.
Like, I just buy that. I think it's kind of
Yeah.
funny and it's an interesting thought experiment.
Yeah. Well, what's the joke? Is they're always like, oh, George Washington would freak out if he saw the state that the country was in right now, like the government, politics, and someone's always like, George Washington would freak the fuck out over a hairdryer. I don't know what you're talking about.
Yeah.
Like,
Well, and it's like,
the
yeah,
bar is
and
low.
you know, ideologically and big picture, like, yeah, he probably would, but he would probably, one of the things that he would think was bad about it was how many black people were involved in it also. So it's
yeah,
like,
and how
you
many
know,
women were here.
yeah. I want to
Founding
just point out,
fathers. Not a lot of them are cool.
yeah. I just want to point out that, like, the dual Seth Rogen performances feels totally seamless in this movie. Like,
Oh, yeah.
I totally,
Like, you don't notice it.
I wasn't even thinking about it most of the time. And it's just, like,
I
cool,
did
and it
notice
totally
it
works.
when he, like, shaved his beard and was pretending to be the other one. Then
Yeah, see-
it got weird.
I don't like that at all. First of all, I mean,
Yeah.
we're getting into, like, the third act of the movie now. And this movie did
Yeah,
just come
'cause
out
this
today as
movie
we're
has
recording.
the most meandering plot of all time. We're just
Yeah,
like doing
well, I don't think it's-
this thing.
Well, I mean, it's a fairly simple 3-act structure. Act 1 is like, oh, check it out, here's this guy from the past. Act 2 is like, he's gonna try to sell pickles. Or he's gonna, like, do a bunch of stuff, and young Seth Rogen's gonna try to sabotage him. And then the third act is like, oh, now, young Seth Rogen's in Pinsk, whatever the made-up country is called.
Yeah, I don't know.
And it's like that whole third act. But anyway, as I was saying, this is a very new movie, and if you haven't seen it and you want to see it, which you should, it's 90 minutes. There's fucking 8 minutes of credits in this movie for some reason. So,
Yeah.
like, it's like an 82-minute movie. It's worth a watch. I like it. But if you don't want spoilers, it's cool if you just, like, bounce. But
Here's
by
your
the
pass.
time right, but, like, at the point where it's like, oh, he, like, really quickly shaves his beard and cuts his hair to look exactly like the other one while they're in the woods.
Yeah.
It's like, I don't know what was going on there, just on a moment-to-moment basis. I didn't get that. But also, like,
Yeah.
I buy the gag of them being played by the same actor when one of them has a huge beard and the other one's mostly clean shaven and they have, like, different hairstyles and stuff. Because
Yeah.
in that context, there's a little bit of plausible deniability, you know? It's like, they don't look
well, it's
exactly the
just like-
same.
Yeah. It's like
And-
great-grandfather, great-grandson. Like, sure, I believe it.
Yeah, and it's like, you could kind of believe that, like, oh, if he, like, shaved his beard, like, you would see the difference, or, like, if he wasn't wearing a hat all the time, you could tell there was, like, a difference between them two, because they're not the same person, obviously.
Yeah.
But then when, like, that becomes essential to the plot, that they're identical, like, they're fucking Jeffrey Tambor in Arrested Development, it's like, I don't get this. Like, why are they identical,
Yeah. Well, it's kind of a joke. They're kind of making fun of, like, offense attorneys? Making fun of lawyers, where they go into that scene, and he's like, am I to believe that this is a different person just because he shaved his beard? And he, like, brings up the picture of Charles Manson, like, with a beard and without a beard. Which is pretty funny, but it aggravated me, because I'm like, okay, but it's... legally, they are two different people. And I get what you're saying, that just because he shaved his beard, you can't say that he's not that guy anymore. But this is a person that exists, and we are claiming that this is the different it was just, like, stupid, and it just made me mad.
But there's also just no reason that they're identical. Like...
yeah, it's just...
that was, like, the thing that weirded me out the most.
Yeah. But like I said, this movie is way more, like, just genuinely heartwarming than it is funny. Like,
yeah.
Very beginning, we have, like, him, like, meet his wife, Sarah, and that whole thing is just straight up cute. Great, like, relationship, great love story. Then you have, like, just, like, him, like, being with his grandson in the first act is just really cute and sweet, and he's, like, showing him, like, the water...
Right,
fizzer. Yeah. And they're just, like, having fun, and, like, he plays the music, and they both dance, and, like, he's, like, dancing, like, in the old-fashioned way. Like, it's cute. It's just genuinely really cute.
Right. I mean, look, here's my big take about it. I mean, obviously it's great and it's cute, but, like, if I were really meeting a guy from 1920, I would have, like, a very strictly tiered list of, like, what concepts to introduce him to first. Like... Seth Rogen shows up in this one and is just like, oh, check this shit out. It's an iPad. It has apps on it. You're like, don't start there.
Yeah.
Like, you gotta, like, build a foundation in order to make this work.
It's the worst place to start. Well, I mean, just, like, I kind of like that this movie kind of ignores the joke of, like, the guy doesn't understand what a microwave is and he's gonna freak out and try to break it. Like, I like how we skip over that. And he's just, like... He doesn't understand all this stuff, but he understands that it's, like, newer technology, so he just kind of goes with it. Like, I like that perspective way more, because, like...
yeah.
Like, if I went to the future in 100 years and they were like, here's a thing, I'd be like, oh, cool, a thing, what does it do? I wouldn't be like, a thing? I'm gonna throw it at the wall! Like, I like that we just don't do that at all.
Yeah, he's stupid. Freaked out, but he's still intelligent, you know?
Yeah, exactly.
There's, so if I'm gonna throw it to you. You're meeting a guy from 1918, just woke up today. Like, you meet him, you're in the hospital room, right? What do you say? Where do you start?
I think I would start, 1918, I would probably start with cars. Because I think that would make the most sense and would help them learn about other things. It's like,
right.
You know,
and
like,
that's like the first thing you're going to see when you walk outside, and it's probably going to freak you out.
Yeah, because you have like the Model T, and I'm going to say, and because cars still look like cars, even if they're not the Model T, you know? Like the same four-wheel steering wheel, like cars look like cars. So I'd be like, all right, this is the Model T, it turned into this thing, there's a bunch of different kinds. And then I feel like you could use that logic with, like, everything else. Like, it used to look like this, and now it looks like this. So, like, show an evolution of ideas, you know?
And, yeah, like, 100 years ago is, like, a good...
Did you want me to make a joke? Because I didn't have one.
No, I just think this is interesting to think about. I think 1918 is, like, a great place because you could be like, okay, you know, like, what a car is. You know, like, what telegrams are. You have a good grasp of, like, electricity.
You know what a stereo is.
Yeah. So I would be like, okay... So first things first, the battery. Electricity can be portable now. That's an important thing to mention, I feel like.
Yeah.
So it's like, that's how all these things are happening. It's because we can, like, store electricity in little things, and that can power things.
Yeah.
And it's like, you know the telegram. Well, first we made it so that instead of just dashes, we could do, like, actual sound and voices. And then also... we made it do a lot more than that. Like, this is the telegram now. Yeah.
Yeah. Also, then we just went crazy.
But I feel like genuinely, I think like talking about like the social politics would be like day one stuff. You'd have to like really,
oh, definitely,
like walk them through it. Not just in the sense that like, yo, black people are cool now. Be like, okay, so like here's how this progressed since you died, right? Like, women got the right to vote.
Just do a quick little history lesson. Yeah.
Yeah, like you probably knew about the movement of women wanting to vote. That happened. Like, that's where we're starting.
Yeah.
And then, like, oh, you know, here's the American Wars, and here's how culture has evolved since then.
What's that joke from Night at the Museum where you have like the mannequins in the Civil War, and you have in the Civil War outfits, you have the Union and the Confederacy, and then at one point Ben Stiller just goes, "Civil War guys, the Union won. Why are you still fighting? You're brothers." Like, I feel like it's that.
Yeah.
Just have that conversation.
It's just like, I don't know, it's so interesting to think about. Just like, how would you make somebody understand the world, you know?
Yeah. I always say, my thing is, I don't want to bring someone back from the past. Like, I feel like if you get George Washington and I showed him Animal Crossing on the Switch, he won't have any understanding or any appreciation for what that is. But if I took someone who has just purchased Mario 64, and then I show them Animal Crossing on the Switch, they will have an appreciation and an understanding of, like, what that means and, like, how far that thing has progressed.
Right, yeah.
That it would be, like, crazy and blow their mind, but they would have an understanding and appreciation other than just having no basis of understanding.
Totally. Because, yeah, if you showed George Washington your Switch, he would just be like, I don't know what this is.
I don't know what that
like,
is.
I don't get it.
It's when you show your dog your iPhone. They don't know what that is.
Yeah, it's like they just don't have the capacity to understand. But yeah, and it's so interesting because there's so much pathos in old Seth Rogen in the first act of this movie.
Oh, yeah.
Which is why it becomes so interesting when he starts saying all this like horrible bullshit in the second act. Because you know exactly who he is and like what his perspective is. Yeah, like you get it.
Yeah.
And it's like, it's weird because like the thing that they highlight the most is not racial stuff, but like feminism stuff. Which is because the reality of like what he's talking about, he's always like, oh, I think women should stay home and do chores because it's the men's job to do whatever. And it's like, I mean, in 1920 in Europe, like, that wasn't... I mean, it was obviously still a form of systemic oppression, but it wasn't something that people were, like, actively fighting against. And the women he knew and the women he interacted with never had a problem with that,
well, we even see how,
strata.
like, shitty his job is, where he's getting paid to squish rats. Of course he doesn't want his wife to be doing that. Like, working sucks. And I get paid 2 cents a day and I might die. Why would I want my wife to do that? Yeah.
And, like... I think the most interesting thing about this whole fish out of water premise, because like you said, he's pretty quick when it comes to like, okay, apps and music and cars and whatever. He's like, I'm getting the hang of it. The thing that he never quite grasps is like just the value of the things around him, you know? Because like, it's not even like an inflation thing. It's like just a total cultural upheaval thing, you know? It's like, oh, you've got chairs and stuff, like you must be very wealthy. It's like, well, no, everybody's got chairs nowadays. Like chairs are around. And it's like just that weird thing where he's like, I mean, that's a weird example because they did have chairs, but you know what I mean though? It's like simple things like used to be luxurious.
He's like socks and shoes.
And there's that moment where he just they're like, oh, I want to take down that billboard. So they're like, well, it would cost like $200,000. He's like, do you not have $200,000? He's like, no, I don't have $200,000.
No, I do not.
It's like the opposite of the classic inflation joke. Like, he like overestimates inflation rather than not knowing it's a thing. Which I don't know, I think is like cool and interesting. This whole movie is just like a fun thought experiment. Seth Rogen being goofy. It's funny. I don't like it.
Yeah. Let me check my notes if I ran.
Because the third act of this movie is weird.
It is. I do like the conversation we have about, like, reconnecting with religion after loss, especially when it's, like, a thing that you do with your parents and when you're, like, on your own. Like, I
Right.
like that subplot. We're getting to that conclusion at Mach speeds. This third act
Right,
is, like,
yeah.
maybe 10 minutes long. Like, we 90 minutes, we got 10 left, let's go. Like, that's
Right.
the last third act of this movie. And, like,
Yeah,
I really like
it's-
the things that we do. Like, the reconciliation is really nice. Like, the whole movie, I'm waiting for them to team up and for him to, like, make him an app for his pickles. And we finally do that at the end of the movie. Like, the very, very end of the movie. I like
Right.
the conversation that we have about, like, honoring your family through your work, and, like, he's not being lazy, he's being cautious because he wants to honor his family, and, like, just the whole, like, him, like, doing the prayers again, and kind of, like, finally, like, actually mourning his parents, so, like, and using
Right.
religion as a way to mourn. Like, I really
Right.
like all
Yeah.
of those things, but we're just going.
Right.
Like, we
So the
don't
plot-
have time, we gotta go.
Right. So the plot is old Seth Rogen becomes a weird alt-right figurehead, and then he gets
Yeah.
No, he is threatened to. They're trying to deport him. So young Seth Rogen tries to help him escape to Canada, but on the way there, old Seth Rogen shaves his beard and cuts his hair instantaneously for reasons that I still can't quite figure out.
Yeah, don't worry about it.
So now they look identical, and he frames young Seth Rogen. So young Seth Rogen gets sent to old Seth Rogen's home country, gets deported. And while he's there, he has this very harrowing experience where he's, like, seeing poverty, because it's still, like, this, like, small European nation. And, and he meets with these old Jews in the synagogue, and they, like, talk to him, and he, like, says a prayer, and he, like, reconnects. Because that's sort of a thing earlier, is, like, old Seth Rogen is, like, really passionate about his religion and his Judaism, but new Seth Rogen's, like, lives in Brooklyn, and he's not really into that. And it's, like, in the third act, it's, like, this reversal where he's, like, sort of giving himself over to, like, the religion of his heritage, and it's interesting and it's cool, but it's also weirdly sweaty and, like, doesn't quite all the way make logical sense. But ideologically, it's sound. I don't know, and that's all you
It's
really
good.
need, I guess.
Yeah.
So what's up? Anything on the chat we should be keeping an eye on?
No, nobody has said anything in the chat.
Oh, okay, fair enough.
I do really like, another funny joke is when old Seth Rogen gets onto, like, that talk show where it's, like, the behind the man kind of talk show, and he's just like, I don't know what's happening, what's going on, and he's like, yeah,
Right.
what's going on with the country and politics and the First Amendment, and then while Seth Rogen's just going, like, yeah, I don't know what's happening, just like, that's just, like, the whole scene, but it's very funny.
Yeah, I mean, I just think it's an interesting... I want to talk about Seth Rogen as a guy for a little while, because his career is very interesting to me.
What's up with him?
So, I mean, he was like not like a child actor, but like a young teen actor for a really long time. Because he was on Freaks and Geeks, and he was in Donnie Darko, and, like, eventually he sort of, like, found this... And he found this niche in, like, stoner movies, and he just became this, like... I mean, the joke impression is just being like, shit, my weed! And he was, like, doing that for a really long time. And, like, doing comedies with James Franco, and, like, he's sort of, like, Adam Sandler style, had, like, this posse of people that was always, like, that he always worked with and always had on his movies, which is partially interesting because the guy who directed this movie, this was his first directorial feature, but he was the DP, the cinematographer, on, like, a whole bunch of other Seth Rogen movies.
Oh, gotcha.
And it's interesting because Seth Rogen and Zac Efron have been working together a lot lately too. And he has been the DP on a lot of different Seth Rogen and also Zac Efron projects, which I think is really interesting. That, like, he's this behind the scenes talent who's been like so weirdly tied to like actors that he likes to work with. But that's the thing about Seth Rogen is that like he's doing a lot of writing and producing work lately. Like that's where he's been doing the majority of his best stuff lately, and I think it's really interesting. Let me look specifically really quickly, because he had that show on Hulu called Future Man that he wrote and produced. He produced Good Boys, which was fine. It was a decent movie.
Yeah.
One sec. Yeah, he was a producer on Disaster Artist. He was behind... I guess he's been a producer on a lot of the movies that he's been in, even in his like stoner comedy days. Yeah, he's always seemed like the kind of person who is a lot more intelligent than he lets on in his like on-screen persona, you know?
Yeah. Well, because didn't he also do that comedy about going to North Korea? What was that movie called?
The Interview. Which was like this weird... That was like a weirdly genius like business decision. Just to be like, North Korea's super trigger happy about American media right now. If we just made a movie that was like, what if we farted on Kim Jong-un? It was like, that would probably warrant some kind of response from North Korea, and it would be a huge headline, and everybody would be talking about it for months. Like, that is just such a genius idea. Like, regardless of whatever...
from that perspective.
It's a weird, I mean, I don't know, there's probably plenty of, like, political realities to unravel in that, but just from, like, the idea of being a producer trying to make a movie is fucking genius.
Yeah, but because of that movie, I never knew where he stood, like, politically without, like, following him on Twitter or whatever. I don't know where he stands, like, on the spectrum of politics because of that movie. That movie makes me think he leans right, but then this movie makes me think he leans left, so, like, I don't know.
Why? What do you mean? Because he was speaking ill of Kim Jong-un?
Well, no, it's just, I don't know, something about that movie. I guess it just seemed more like making fun of North Korea than it did making fun of Kim Jong-un, if that makes any sense. And those are, like, two very different things. Yeah. It's
whatever. Like... But Seth Rogen pulls this move on Twitter a lot that I think is so fascinating, where whenever people are saying racist bullshit about like something he's involved with or like to him or to a movie he's in, he just goes on, he leaves this comment that says like, hey, fucking don't watch my movies anymore. You don't have my permission. I don't want you to watch them anymore. Because you suck and I hate you, and I'm fundamentally opposed to you watching any movie that I'm involved with. And it's like, that's nothing. Yeah. That's like, but like, if Seth Rogen said that to you, you would literally never be able to watch. Yeah. It's not even like, because obviously you'd be like, oh, whatever, I can do whatever I want. I'm going to watch Pineapple Express. You can't tell me not to. But you would think about that every single time. Every single time Seth Rogen appeared in anything, you would always be like, he told me to go fuck myself and that I wasn't allowed to be doing this. That would never leave you, you know? That's such a weirdly...
For better or for worse.
Yeah, it's such a weirdly biting thing to do. Like, you will just never leave that person's mind ever again after something like that.
Oh, I did cry when he watched that old video, like, at his graduation. That got me, and I'm upset that it got me.
Oh, yeah. Where his parents are, like, there's, like, just watching the video of him, like, after his graduation ceremony, and there's this home video of his parents, like, handing him a check and being like, this is an investment. And you just get the vibe. It's probably not very much, but it, like, means a lot to Seth Rogen, and he's, like, tearing up a little bit. You're like, oh, man, that rules. And... Yeah, I don't know.
Really
I mean, like I said,
I hate it.
like I said, this movie's not like about anything specific. It's just sort of like it's, you know, it feels like a short story written for the New Yorker, which it was. It's just like, you know, here's this thing. It goes a lot of different places. It's kind of like Secret Life of Walter Mitty. It's just like it touches on a lot of different ideas, and it's kind of a thought experiment, but it does have, you know, some meaning. And some ideas in it that you can think about and, you know, explore at your leisure. But it's not like, it doesn't have like a thesis. It's just like, you know, Stuff's
We're just gonna explore
crazy.
an idea.
Yeah.
I think that is a cool precedent to set. Because I feel like when people try to make movies out of short stories, they feel like they have to, like, completely change the short story in order to, like, fit it into, like, the structure of a movie.
Right.
Whereas short stories can be kind of free form and kind of meandering and just kind of, like, talking about whatever they want to be talking about. I don't know. I think that would be... I wish more movies were like this. Like, I think that's a cool precedent to set with, like, when you're...
Yeah.
When you're turning a short story into a movie, you can keep it kind of in that same short story kind of format and still make it a movie.
Yeah. And I shouldn't speak too much about it because I haven't read the short story. I'm assuming it... What I am saying, though, is that it does very much feel like a short story in the ideas it presents and the type of... and the way it's presenting them. And I'm assuming a lot about this movie is I'm assuming that this movie is very faithful to the short story. Not only because it just feels that way, but also because the writer of the short story was a writer on the movie and a producer on the movie, and he was, like, very much involved. So I'm assuming that they're pretty similar to each other in terms of, like, you know, like, what
maybe,
happens
like, specific events are, like, change, but, like, same things happen.
Yeah. You know what Seth Rogen's good in? Kung Fu Panda.
Remind me who he plays.
I want you to guess.
Kung Fu Panda.
Kung Fu Mantis.
That's right. I forgot.
Yeah. Let's see. Let's take a look at Seth Rogen. And that's the weird thing about this movie is that there's not really...
Let's look at Seth Rogen.
There's not really any other, like, actors in it. Like, 90% of the movie is, like,
we got Seth
just
Rogen
him.
twice. We don't need anybody else.
And it's like, you've got Yorma Taccone, who plays the, like, the sort of, like, venture capitalist investor.
Yeah.
And you've got the woman who plays his wife at the beginning in The Old Country.
Mm-hmm.
And, like, that's kind of it. I don't know. And...
yeah.
It's interesting. It's kind of cool. I think that... I feel like there's a very easy version of this where it's like... you know, oh, he comes back from the past and... or he... I guess he jumps into the present from the past and he helps his great-grandson get a girlfriend and learn to stick up for himself and, like... you know, teaches him a little bit about manliness and the old times, you know, and, like, helps him get a leg up.
Yeah, and Zac Efron is there.
And there's, like, a little bit of that, but it's not, like, what the movie's about, you know?
Yeah. I do...
And I think it's interesting because there's that bit where he's like, oh, you know, in Old Country, you throw punch. If you don't throw punch, then you're not a real man. You have polio arm. And he's like, okay, fuck it. Yeah, whatever. I'll send the email. That's my throwing a punch. I'll just fucking do it. Whatever. And at first it seems like that's going to fix everything, but then it still kind of doesn't. And it's like, oh, is this really as valuable as it seems on the surface, you know?
Yeah. I mean,
there's a movie...
It's a weird line to toe of, like having these two very different mentalities from two very different time periods and, like, comparing them to each other and weirdly not just trying to be, like... it's hard to not pick a winner, basically. It's like, oh, new times are better or old times are better, because both are kind of rude and diminish each other when you say that one is better than the other instead of saying that one grew from the other and you have to appreciate differences, you know? Like, I think this movie handles that really well. Like I said, it could have so easily been fuck millennials, just be a real man, like we were in the 20s when we would hit women. Like, it could so easily have been that, and it wasn't. Yeah.
And, like, I watched Stuber recently, which is a much more nihilistic movie than I was expecting it to be. There's something almost like Michael Bay-esque about it, where Dave Bautista plays this cop who's, like, shooting up drug dealers and, like, torturing people and, like, doing whatever it takes to blah blah blah, but he also has this strained relationship with his daughter. And then Dave Bautista is like and then Kumail Nanjiani is like Shia LaBeouf in Transformers, where he's just like this, like, castrated beta male dude who has a crush on this girl and he can't, like, vocalize it. And then, like, as they as they interact with each other and become begrudging friends, they sort of learn, like, oh, neither of these is really the right way. You got to kind of meet in the middle somewhere between being assertive and masculine and being a soy boy. Like, there's a balance somewhere in between, you know?
Yeah.
It's like, I guess, like, fine, that's, I suppose, like, whatever.
These feel like two toxic masculinity standards, but that's okay.
Yeah.
I guess.
But, like, and I feel like there's a version of this that could be sort of a version of that. It's like, oh, Seth Rogen's this, like, fucking whiny little app developer. He's never worked a hard day in his life. He just hangs out in his Brooklyn apartment and listens to fucking Tame Impala all day. And then Seth Rogen is fucking, oh, old time, I dig ditches, I'm huge and I'll fight people and I get what I want. And then they, like, learn to accept each other and, like, find out that, like, the real best way to do things is somewhere in the middle. Like, not quite modern,
together.
but not quite old-fashioned either. And I like that, like, at the end of this movie, neither character is really, like, neither character has their, like, worldview overthrown, you know? Like, they both change, but, like, only a little bit. It's, like, just a little bit of a chipping away at them, you know? They're not, like, learning lessons from each other. They're just, like, character interactions resulting in character changes, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I feel like old Seth Rogen kind of learns not to be on Twitter, if that makes any sense. Like, he just kind of, I don't know. Because, again, like we said, the situation is not applicable to any situation. So, like, any lesson that he learns is not applicable to anything else because no one else has been teleported from 100 years in the past. But, like, I don't know, he kind of learns that he can't say everything that he wants to say. And I think that's enough of a lesson for him to learn.
Right. But it speaks to American culture. Just because it's not a lesson you can take away, it makes you stroke your chin and go, It's a wry look at American culture through the eyes of a man from 1920.
Seth Rogen.
Yeah.
Seth
Rogen does it.
Twice. Seth Rogen
two different times.
That's four eyeballs from Seth Rogen.
We talked, speaking of Stuber, we talked for a while about having, like, a stealth, like, Dave Bautista fan cast like strain on this podcast, being like, we're all in on Dave Bautista. We're going to cover every Dave Bautista movie that comes out as it comes out. But eventually we sort of realized that, like, Dave Bautista doesn't have, like, a whole lot of projects lined up. And all the projects he does have lined up, we're, like, almost definitely going to cover anyway. So it's like, it wouldn't really be that funny if we did that. It's like, yeah, we're probably going to do Dune when it comes out. Like, obviously we're going to talk about Dune. Like, there's not much else. Although I do think it would be fun to go back. Yeah, it would be fun to go back and cover a whole bunch of his pre-Guardians of the Galaxy roles, though.
Yeah, that would be fun.
All his weird straight-to-DVD movies and, like, Scorpion King sequels and stuff. Just be like, let's see how Dave Bautista has grown.
Can we watch all the Scorpion King movies?
We can finish up Star Wars and then we'll do Scorpion King.
Yeah,
we always said we wanted to do...
and then Scorpion King.
We always said we wanted to do Planet of the Apes after Star Wars, but maybe Scorpion King's a better way to go.
Because I got a lot of opinions about Planet of the Apes because I love them so much, but I've also said those opinions before.
But it'd be fun to go back and do the old ones. I want to do all the Planet of the Apes.
Oh, like all of them? Yeah, we could do that.
Including the Mark Wahlberg one.
Oh, okay. Oh. I didn't realize.
Yeah. We should watch
we did a full hour. We're good.
Well, but we did have to cut out. Let's just keep it going for a little bit longer, like 2 or 3 minutes longer. I just want to make sure we hit an hour after I cut out all the other stuff.
That's fine.
No. We're just vibing.
Just have naturally short episodes, you know? It's like we said our piece, we chilled, we vibed, and we're done. Fine. We did it.
Fine.
Go team, we did it. We don't gotta force chill vibes. We did it. We said our piece.
I'm gonna record extra stuff later.
Multiplied Seth Rogen by 2. We did everything we wanted to do. We learned, we loved, we talked about Seth Rogen twice.
You know what we should have done?
2 of them.
You know what we should have done for the intro? We should have been like, oh, I'm Jackson McMurray, and you could be like, oh, and I'm, Yorgo McMurray
I
from
am
the
also
old
Jackson
country.
McMurray. I am Jackson McMurray from old country.
Yeah. That would have been good. Okay, anyway, as we wrap this up, I guess I haven't looked at. We'll see if I'll look for a minute to see if I can find a review. We'll see though.
Oh, there might not be.
Because this is one of the situations where it's like the movie came out today, and there probably aren't going to be
true.
that many hilarious reviews yet, but we'll see. Oh, you know what doesn't happen in this movie? Everyone was like,
What?
oh, and is there going to be a scene where young Seth Rogen shows old Seth Rogen weed for the first time? He doesn't. It doesn't happen.
It didn't happen.
Doesn't smoke weed at all.
Yeah. I feel like the stigma that comes with weed is kind of as new as weed is.
Right.
So, like, if you, like, showed it over... Like, here's weed. It's a thing that you smoke. They'd be like, tight, I got tobacco.
Like,
I don't
yeah, it
I don't
sounds
care.
like... It's like we take opiates all
Sounds
the time.
like the logical
on purpose.
progression.
Yeah, there's cocaine in our soda. Like, it's whatever.
Yeah,
That
we
would be a
don't
thing
give
you'd have to
shit.
tell him day
Opioids?
one. It's like, hey, cocaine's not cool
There's
anymore.
no longer coke and cocaine. Cocaine and coke. What? You know that sweet, awesome, like, cure-all tonic that's called Coca-Cola that you love so much? We made it worse? Probably. It probably tasted better when it had cocaine in it, right?
I don't know. I guess there's only one way to know. I wonder if you could dig
Do
up
you
that
think
old recipe.
like, if a person, like, drank, like, modern Coke, they'd be like, this tastes like shit. This doesn't taste
Someday-
good anymore.
Someday, I want to have a platform big enough that we could, like, you know, make the connections necessary to, like, have a taste test, like, under government surveillance, where they're like, it's cool, we're looking at you,
Yeah.
you can do this just once. Where it's like old cocaine
they do like
Coca-Cola.
Yeah. I mean, it wasn't a lot.
So, Adeline, do you want to hear a 1-star review of American Pickle?
I do.
Did you say no?
I said I do.
Oh, okay.
No,
So
I
this
don't.
person gives
I
this
don't
movie-
want...
This person gives this movie the lowest possible score. 1/2 of 1 star.
Gotcha.
This is from Letterboxd.com. This person says, Seth Rogen with 2 Oscar-worthy performances.
Seth Rogen really be out here.
Yeah, so I don't know what this guy's deal is. 2 Oscar-worthy performances in this 1 out of 10 movie.
Is he being sarcastic?
I guess. Who's to say?
Did he hit the wrong button? Who's to say?
We will never know for certain. All we know
What this man was thinking.
is that, I mean, we don't know anything, honestly. Anyway, my name's Jackson McMurray,
My name is Adeline McMurray.
and this is No Nerds Allowed.
And there are no nerds allowed. I'm gonna start giving my favorite movies 1-star reviews.
And just glowing reviews, but the number is just 1.
But I'm just a glowing review with a lot of frowny face emojis.
Adeline, what do you think a person from 100 years ago would think of this movie? Of American Pickle?
Well, they just find it super relatable. Like, that's
They'd be like, yes, that it me.
I think that. Yes,
Same.
queen. I'm like that.
You dropped this
I
king.
would do that.
That's what the person from the 20s
You
says.
dropped this king. But he's like from the year like 1700, so it's like actually a king.
So,
Funny
he a
stuff.
king? Is he a king? Did he drop this?
Did he drop this? I have to return this to
You
my
dropped this,
worship.
king.
My lord.
My liege, you've
dropped
dropped
something.
this. Okay,
Your
stop
crown.
recording.
Okay.